Hi again. So one more video for this week. I'm going to quickly go through our analysis, visual analysis anyway, PowerPoint. And I'm bummed that we can't be in class together. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because I think it's just so ripe with opportunities to explore. But I'll try to condense this into less than 15 minutes to talk about visual analysis. So when we're talking about visual analysis, we're talking about things that we can see, that we can analyze. So things like movies, um, music videos, works of art, photographs, advertisements, cartoons. So all of these things could be aspects that you choose to analyze for essay number 2. And you want to, when you do an analysis, not just simply review or summarize what's happening in the advertisement in the movie. Most people can find that information easily. Most people can summarize, a TV show that they've seen or an advertisement that they've seen, but you really want to analyze what's happening. So you're breaking apart the components of the piece itself, trying to get to a deeper understanding. So analysis is usually more complex than summary, and it usually looks at things like when was the item produced, what year, and during that year, what was happening in the world. So if I'm looking at a piece of art from the Harlem Renaissance, which occurred in the 1920s, 1930s, I'm thinking about the cultural context of the Great Migration of African Americans from the South to the North, this explosion of Black art, whether it was music or paintings or writing. So I'm looking at all the things that happened that influenced it, and I'm taking that into account when I think about my analysis. And I'm also looking at things like color and white space. And if I'm doing like a movie, I'm thinking about music and characters. So lots of different things to consider when you do an analysis. Before you begin, you might want to think about who the artist or creator is. There might be some history about that person that is pertinent to your analysis. Again, when was it created? What year? What decade? What was happening in the world? What is the subject about? And who is it, or what is it supposed to represent? Who do you think the intended audience was? Some pieces of art are for specific groups of people. Some are supposed to be for everybody. And what was happening in the world at the time it was created? There might be, for instance, a few movies or TV series that reflect the pandemic. I think there was a television show that was created solely using Zoom, and people weren't interacting together, but people were interacting on a screen. So that is indicative of a moment in history. So again, who's the piece for? And think about, is it supposed to be informative? Is it supposed to persuade me? Is it supposed to provoke me? I had a student a couple of years ago do a critique of a art installation called Piss Christ. And in it is a crucifix of Jesus in a jar of urine. And this was a very provocative piece, as you can imagine. And in doing some research on the artist, the student learned some of the reasons why the artist created it, was able to analyze the public and critics' reaction to it, and try to dig for the deeper meaning of why someone would put a piece like that together. You are trying to break down the piece to better understand it, to maybe intensify your appreciation or disgust for the piece. And you are looking at things like the objects and the subjects used, the types of lines, the colors, the textures, the proportions, the movement. This is especially true if you're looking at like a static piece of art, like a painting, or if you're looking at an advertisement. Is it realistic? Is it photography? Is it cartoon? Is it stop action? Is it, how is it created and what is the effect of that? So for instance, if we look at, this is an advertisement that you might see in a newspaper, very little writing on the page, but it is advertising an automobile. We don't see an automobile featured on this advertisement, but it's saying something about a feature of a Volkswagen. So you can start to look at, okay, there's a lot of white space on the page. There's not a lot of color. Your eyes might be drawn to the orange of the goldfish. You got this little prickly porcupine in the middle of these 3 bags of goldfish. What is it trying to say? And, you might also find your eye drawn to the lower right corner. And my eye sees the Volkswagen symbol before it reads the text. So look at the action, look at the motion of the picture, and what is this ad doing? Is it doing it well? Who does it appeal to? Who does it not appeal to? Where did the ad appear? And I think I ripped this out of a magazine, like a Women's Day or something like that, or a Real Simple. And so that can also tell you who the intended audience might be. Here's an example of an abstract piece of art. There's a lot of white space. And what you might do when you start looking at abstract art is kind of take a step back and go, okay, what do I see? Well, I immediately see either like a person flying or a bird. I see kind of a darker figure on the left that's kind of looming over this more innocent yellow bird-like figure. And there seems to be some energies, maybe some positive energies, some negative energy. What do I think is happening? And obviously with abstract art, you can't just say, this is the thing that's happening. It's very much open to interpretation. And one of your jobs could be to say, in this piece, this is the battle between good and evil. This is the acknowledgement that the life force is always moving. I don't know, I'm making stuff up, but you can have some fun with trying to figure out what's going on in the piece. This type of work has also helped me to better appreciate art that I just don't understand upon first looking. I used to hate abstract art. I thought it was ugly, pointless, a 5th grader could do it. But I've started to appreciate it more because I like the open-ended nature of it. I can see things differently. I can interpret it the way I want to interpret it. I like the color. I like the different shapes. You might not be where I am. That's fine. But if abstract art has always frustrated you, this might be an opportunity for you to explore it a little bit differently. Keep in mind too that oftentimes colors mean things in our societies, and those meanings can differ by culture. So for instance, in the United States, when we go to a funeral, when we're mourning, we often wear black. But in a country like India, they wear white. So completely different ends of the color spectrum, but they're both meant to show respect and sadness and to honor those who have passed. In the United States, the colors that I've shown here on the screen have various meanings. So green can mean growth, it can mean life, fertility, but it can also mean envy and sickness. Red, coming up on Valentine's Day, means passion and love and all these strong emotions, but it can also mean stop and horror. So there's usually 2 sides to color, a positive and a negative, and depending on the way something is created, it might be a little bit of both. So if you're watching a horror movie, there's probably a lot of darkness, there might be a lot of red, there might be some yellows. What do those colors mean? And then if you have images, such as in an ad or in a piece of art, is it realistic? Is it abstract? Is it hand-drawn? Is it computer aided? Is it paint? Are there logos and trademarks littering it? Is there a metaphor or a simile or a symbol embedded in what you're looking at? And think about the logos that we immediately recognize, the Nike swoosh, the McDonald's arches. We've lived in a society where we are bombarded with imagery all the time, and we immediately process what something means. I think I've seen plenty of videos where most of us Americans can recognize logos more than we can recognize the past presidents, US capitals. It's embedded because we've seen it so much. So there's some real strength in the power of those symbols. Think about who the piece is for. It can be different. It can change throughout history, but it can be broken down by gender, by race, by age, by socioeconomic status, by religion. Sometimes it's meant to appeal to everybody. Sometimes it's not. And then think about, will the audience like it? Will we be receptive to it or will we not? And, think about movies that have been flops. Why have they been flops? They may have been intended to be really mass appealing, but something didn't work. And why didn't it work? And then as you start to think about it, think about how you react to a piece. So I was lucky enough to go to Van Gogh's museum in Amsterdam and see some of his pieces, as well as go to Montreal and see an interactive display that he had. So I find his work really evocative. And, I look at this picture and I feel rested and I feel like I want summer to come, and I appreciate the area in which I live. And I love those colors, the greens and the blues and the yellows. And what does it make me think of? It makes me think of travel. It makes me think of planting and nourishment. And have I seen anything like this before? Well, I think I see it when I drive through the roads around our bluff country. So write down your initial reaction to something, positive or negative, and then that can help you start to analyze the piece. In class, when I teach this, we usually use an example like this to go through and talk about what's happening. We do a little research on the author and or the painter, Grant Wood, and find out a little bit about him, find out about the models who modeled for this particular painting, when it was set, and start to think about the use of color, kind of the drabness, the expressions on their face, the use of these perpendicular lines throughout. Is it a happy piece? Is it a sad piece? Why? Some people see it as happy, some people see it as not. And so, again, open to interpretation. So here's an example of analyzing that previous picture. In the famous painting American Gothic by Grant Wood, which is the pitchfork picture, the artist's use of dour expressions, drab colors, and strong lines evokes a sense of puritanical rigidity and sadness. So we're making a statement about it's kind of a prissy, sad painting, and the use of the expressions, they're not smiling, their kind of faces are turned down. It's not very colorful, everything's kind of muted. And then all of those strict, strong lines. And we're relating that to our puritanical roots. The Puritans came over, they had these very strict, strong ideas of what work ethic meant, but they weren't necessarily people who allowed themselves a lot of pleasure. And so that's what this picture represents in this thesis statement. So think about ethos, logos, pathos, the use of emotion, the use of logic, the use of credibility. Think about who the piece is created for, whether it's to inform or persuade or just provoke. Think about the parts that are in it, the visual elements, the color, the white space, the objects that are in it, and then any themes or messages that you can take out of it. So again, I wish we could do this in class together. It's a lot of fun, but think about visual things that you might be interested in analyzing, whether that's a painting, a photograph, an advertisement, a movie, a music video. If you do a movie or music video, there are obviously going to be other components like sound and dialogue, plot, and so they can be a little bit more complicated to do. I would probably encourage you to do something that's more static, like a painting or a photograph. It'd be a little bit easier, but hopefully this offers you some ideas and gets you thinking about things that have puzzled you or that you really like that you could analyze. Hope that helps. Take care.